lot of reading and you've got lots of stuff and lots of questions. So what I'm going to try and do is to say in roughly 30-35 minutes what I have to say, and then we can open to questions and take the discussion wherever you want to take it for the rest of the time that we have. The approach I'm going to use is to try and set up a framework which helps you fit concepts. I'm sure you've read about the concepts, and everyone says Hinduism is a very complex religion. I don't agree. I think if you think about it straight, it's a very, very simple religion. So that's what I'm going to try and persuade you. I'm going to set up a framework that makes it all look simple, and then let's see if it works for you. So let me ask you a question simply first. What is it that you think universally everybody wants in life? Peace?
Meaning, purpose.
Oh, that's very highbrow. I was going for happiness.
Well, happiness can be derived.
Right? I mean, if you get happiness from purpose, that's great too. But just happiness. And the funny thing is that since the beginning of time, everyone has been trying to be happy. But it doesn't succeed. You know, people are happy some of the time, the rest of the time it's sort of down. There's ups and downs in life. Now, if you think of life as being that, you know, that's life. Ups and downs, and that's it. That's one way to approach it. But you can think of the sages in India thousands of years ago asking this question. And indeed, the first verse of the Samkhya philosophy, the text of the Samkhya philosophy says, the causes of unhappiness are worth investigation because the obvious answers are not convincing. You know, maybe with money you're happy, that's not true. With nice family you're happy, that's not true. I mean, everyone who has that is happy some of the time and not happy the rest of the time. So, investigating that, they come to a conclusion. And to make things simple, I'm just going to give you the conclusion. And then we can sort of figure things out. The conclusion is that this whole universe is nothing but pure consciousness, which for the purposes of our, for discussion, we call it Om. It's just a symbol, a name, and that's pure consciousness. Pure consciousness has literally no attributes. It is pure consciousness, that's it. But then, for the purposes of discussion, you give it some attributes. One of those attributes is Sat, which means existence, pure existence, the kind of existence that's always there, no matter what the form is. So the name changes, the form changes, existence remains the same. This table decays, becomes mulch, feeds a tree becomes a plank, becomes a table again. But that Sat remains the same no matter what. Another attribute is Chit, which is pure awareness. Not awareness of something, pure awareness. The Upanishads call this that by which you can think. It's not the process of thinking, it is that by which you can think. That is pure awareness. And the third is Ananda, which means bliss. Not the bliss that comes from a particular object or a particular experience, not something that you get. Ananda is the bliss that is yours, permanently yours from inside. So I said Om is the whole universe, which means it includes us. And our characteristics are Sat, Chit, Ananda. You may have heard the phrase Satchidananda. That's what this is. You know, the three together become Satchidananda. So if my nature is Ananda, how come I'm miserable? So that's the paradox. And you can think of all of Hinduism as being a way to explain how to get from here to there. Where is here? That's the spiritual journey is what we're talking about. Here is where we are now. I'm going to put some Sanskrit words down simply because if you come across them, you will know what they are. This goal can be called moksha. When you get there, that's moksha. Where we are now, artha, which is material, wealth, security, and kama is desire. So colloquially, making money and having fun. So that's basically what most of us do for most of our lives all the time. Making money, having fun, getting a job, doing your work, making sure you have an income, material security, insurance, this, that, and enjoying it, recreation, vacation, etc., etc. So that's basically what occupies our life. We need to go there. What's involved? The scriptures say that this being my nature, all I need to do is to connect with my nature. That's all I really need to do. Take the analogy of a lake. If the water is still and clear, you can see the bottom of the lake. So if my mind is still and clear and still, clear and calm, I can see my own nature. So all that's required for me to be in touch with my nature is a clear and calm mind. I apologize for my handwriting. It's not a trained teaching handwriting. So, clear and calm mind. Now, if I have a clear and calm mind, I automatically am in touch with my nature, which is Om, period. So, the only reason why I'm unhappy is because I'm agitated. If my mind is not clear and calm, I'm agitated, and therefore, I think I forget that I am Om. I forget my pure nature. I think of myself as a limited human being. And because I'm limited, I need this to be happy. Really speaking, I don't need anything to be happy. So, question then becomes, how do I get a clear and calm mind? Certainly, if I'm making money, having fun, I'm unlikely to have a clear and calm mind. You're playing the stock market or checking out movies or whatever. It's not a clear and calm mind. So, what's involved is the spiritual journey. First step in the journey is to practice a certain amount of discipline, which we call dharma. Dharma literally means to sustain. The Sanskrit root verb means to sustain. So, sustain what? Sustain my own integrity, that is acting true to my own nature. So one definition of dharma is my essential nature. The dharma of sugar is to be sweet. The dharma of fire is to burn. The dharma of water is to cool. So that is essential nature, that's dharma. In behavior, how do you apply the concept? That which sustains me, sustains my family, sustains my community, sustains my nation, sustains humanity, sustains the world, sustains the cosmos, in eternity, all of that is dharma. So you can see it's a very elastic concept. That's why I don't even try and translate it. It's translated normally as righteousness, etc., etc. code of conduct, righteousness, laws, but all of these are very, very inadequate translations of the word dharma. So dharma is what I need to do in order to be true to myself and true to my surroundings. That's dharma. In practical terms, there are some lists of things, I mean, lots of lists actually, of things that constitute right behavior, right values, and so on. We can get into that if you are interested. You ask me, and I'll go into that and into those details. But for now, that discipline. So nothing wrong in making money or having fun, but do so in a way that is consistent with your dharma. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't hurt others, don't acquire and hoard, be content with stuff, and that's dharma. Well, that's step one. Step two is to practice what is known as karma yoga. The word yoga literally means union, to unite. So yoga is that which unites me with my nature. Any practice, any philosophy, any activity that helps me unite with my nature is yoga. Very different from what the popular understanding of yoga is, right? Yoga nowadays is understood to be exercises.
Right.
Well, that is one step, one element. I'll come to that. But karma means action. So karma yoga is the yoga of action, which means how do I act in the world in ways in which I will find and be connected with my own nature. Rule number one, do not work for the reward. So, any action will have a result, but don't work only for the result. In other words, don't agitate your mind saying, I've got to have that. So, in popular terminology, what's it? Do your best, leave the rest kind of attitude. So, in Karma Yoga, step one, do not be attached to the fruits of action. That's the technical definition. In the Bhagavad Gita, you will find that many, many times. Do not be attached to the fruits of action. Rule number two, do something that's elevating, that is uplifting, that helps the world, helps society. And rule number three, do it in community, do it with others. So Karma Yoga has these three elements. Not attached to the fruits of action, something useful for welfare of the world, and in concert with others. Now, why is that important? Because, as long as you're self-centered and, inward-oriented, doing things for yourself, inevitably there will be agitation. So, the one way to get over agitation is to open yourself to others and do things for other people and get the joy from a variety of different kinds of activities rather than simply sort of feathering my own nest kind of activity. So that's the next step. Then comes what I regard as one of the really very interesting features of Hinduism, which is a recognition that not everybody is the same. Any journey I might choose to take the highway, someone else may take the scenic road, someone else may prefer to go by boat, by bicycle. So different people have different ways of getting there. And so what the scriptures do is to define a variety of paths for the spiritual journey and simply describe them and put them out there, and you experiment and choose and proceed as you find it best. So one path, there are many paths. I'm just going to talk about three main ones. So one is called Raja Yoga. Raja means royal, so this is the royal path. This is what is another name for what you will also find described in what's known as the Yoga Sutras. Sorry, these are two separate words. Yoga Sutras. Yoga you know. Sutras is, and the author of these is Patanjali, which a name you might have heard, I don't know. Patanjali was about 200 BC, and he collected in what are known as sutras. The sutras is an interesting digression. A lot of the texts in the scriptures, a lot of the texts are given, a lot of the explanatory texts are given in an aphoristic kind of language. Very, very brief, 2 words, 3 words at a time, and a whole set, so that it's very condensed. And the idea, I guess, is that people memorize the whole lot. So, one way to memorize it was to make it very compact. And then, of course, it is open to interpretation. So then, automatically, one of the definitions of sutra is that it is compact, etc. And it is many-faceted, many-faced, actually. So, when you unpack a sutra, you can do it in a variety of ways. So, sutra is a very rich form of expression. So, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras define what is known as Raja Yoga. It has 8 steps in this path. The first 2 steps is the equivalent of dharma. The third step is our famous exercises, the physical exercises. The fourth is breathing exercises. The fifth is technically sense withdrawal, that is sort of turning inwards, turning the attention inwards. Sixth is concentrating the mind. 7 is meditation. And the 8th is samadhi, which means absorption. A concept you will find in Buddhism as well. So, the purpose of this is to take you to a state of meditation, and that meditation leads you to a clear and calm mind. Now, this is a highly disciplined path. If you were to practice this path, you would have to do every day the physical exercises, the breathing exercises, and practice meditation or associated disciplines. Yes?
Are these steps and stages, like you have to go, sort of like master the breathing exercises before you go to turning inwards in meditation, or is it all together?
Yes and no. It's like building a building, and the better the foundation, the more you will get out of the next step. But then you can't wait forever until you've mastered dharma. The yamas and niyamas the first 2 steps are called yamas and niyamas, and they are very profound. The first of them is ahimsa, non-injury. So you think of non-injury, and that's a lifetime practice, right? Because non-injury in action, in word, and in thought. Wow. So to be able to master that is a lifetime practice. So what you do is start working on multiple steps at the same time. Now this is fine for somebody who has the discipline to go engage in a daily practice, has a healthy body, because without that you can't do these things, and the time, I guess. So, not suitable for everybody. Another possibility is Jnana Yoga, which is the path of knowledge. Knowledge means, the path of knowledge involves studying the scriptures, reading the Upanishads, the Vedas, the various other texts. You want me to write some of these names down? Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas, Itihasas. Vedas are Vedas, you know that, is the revealed text. Upanishads are the philosophical parts of the Vedas, actually, the philosophical texts. This is the most important of all. Puranas are stories, because the same message that you have in the Vedas and Upanishads can be converted to a story form so that more people can read them and more people can connect with them. So you have a whole lot of stories. Itihasa literally means history, but really there are two big texts. This is the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. The Mahabharata is the very, very big text. It is, I believe, if you add the Iliad and the Odyssey together and multiply by 7,
Oh my.
that is the Mahabharata. And one tiny section of the Mahabharata is the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is 18 chapters, which is one tiny slice of the text Mahabharata.
Can you write that down?
Wow.
Sorry?
Can you write down
Oh,
the
yeah.
tiny part?
Okay, Bhagavad Gita. Okay. Bhagavad Gita literally means song of the Lord. Bhagavat is of the Lord, Gita song. So this is the teaching of Krishna to Arjuna, which I'm sure you'll have read around it. That comes in the Mahabharata. So the path of knowledge is studying these things, plus a bunch of other texts, understanding them, resolving doubts, and practicing them. That's what the path of knowledge is. So the steps, the fundamental technique in the path of knowledge is inquiry. So no question is out of bounds. Everything is, you push against everything. So the way in which the texts unfold is often as a debate. You know, there's a position, and then somebody else questions it, then there's an answer, and there's a further question, answer, question. So that process of dialogue is what constitutes the text.
Wow.
And even in the Upanishads you have dialogues. The Bhagavad Gita is a dialogue. And in fact Arjuna would challenge Krishna and say, you know, you just said that and now you're saying this. What do you mean? Or you're saying this doesn't make sense. Now don't confuse me. These are literal quotes. It says, your words are confusing me. Don't confuse me. Come straight, tell me. Do you want me to do this or that? Or it says, you're telling me all these things, but I can't control my mind. How am I supposed to do all that? And, you know, so very direct questions. All of that is in the path of knowledge. Questions which are completely untrammeled, no limits. Now, this is fine for somebody who has that bent of mind, right? You do a lot of study, sit in the library, reflect, and get into discussions and so on. Not everybody has that. So, okay, if you don't have a very healthy body and discipline, you don't have an intellectual attitude, well, then what? Well, at least you have a heart. So,
At least.
Bhakti Yoga is the path of devotion. Now this is where Hinduism gets very tricky, and most people stumble at this point. So devotion means to God, right? Okay, what is God? Who is God? what do we mean by God? What qualities do you associate with God? What do you think?
All-knowing.
All-knowing,
Love.
love, all-powerful, eternal, yes,
Truth.
truth. Truth meaning absolute, right? There's something
Universal.
unchangeable. There's something unchangeable about this, whatever we think
The
of as
truth.
God, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So something beyond change. Sorry,
I'm sorry, bliss.
bliss. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So all of these are different, and from our perspective, when we think of God, there are times when we want God to protect us. There are times when we are in a hole and we want God to pull us out. Times when we are weeping and we really want somebody, a shoulder to weep on, so to speak. All of these are ways in which I personally, each of us would want to relate to some higher being. So what the Hindu sages did was to say, look, let's get this sort of sorted out a bit. One phrase, one level of divine is called Brahman. Don't confuse this with Brahmin, the caste, which is a different thing. Brahman literally means big. That's all it means.
Big.
Big. So something infinite. And that is another name for Om. So Brahman is the technical concept for Om, which means something infinite, space-like, beyond attributes, all-pervasive, not even all-pervasive, it is everything. But as I said, there's no discussion then, right? That's all there is, and what do you talk about? So the next level is Ishvara. Ishvara has attributes. Brahman has no form and no attributes. Ishvara has no form. I mean, there's no statement as to whether Ishvara is male, female, big, small, white, black, green, gray hair, beard, big feet. No, nothing. So Ishvara but has attributes defined particularly in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Ishvara is all-knowing, all-powerful, and the sort of the one who rules over the world, but still very abstract. So what Hinduism does is then say, okay, now if you want to give your heart and mind to someone, you have to have some feeling for that, some concept of someone that you can relate to in a more direct way. So there are another level, which are names of gods, which are many. Vishnu, Ganesha, Durga, Kali, Shiva, Hanuman, etc. I mean, there's large numbers of names that I can think of. This is just a few. Each of these has a form, and when you have a form, you can also then relate to that form, and there are stories. So what I'm going to give you now is pass around a little leaflet, which I just give a few. Any extras? Okay. Everyone has one? Okay. If you go to page All right, just the first part is Om, which we have talked about. Just tells you what Om is. This one is sort of 5 things worth knowing about Hinduism, which we will come back to if we need to. The third one is what I want you to look at, which is Ganesha. This is a form that's very popular throughout the country. Big head, elephant head. The big head signifies wisdom. The elephant head, because the elephant signifies intelligence in our culture. The elephant is indeed a very intelligent animal. The trunk is very, very versatile. It's strong enough to pick a whole tree. You know, the logging operations are done with elephants. So they chop a tree down, the elephant comes, just picks it up and takes it away. And the same trunk can pick up a little needle from the ground. It's just amazing how much sensitivity there is in the elephant's trunk. So, quite remarkable instrument. Big belly, because Ganesha signifies Om. Om is the universe, so the whole universe fits in his belly. And little feet, because Ganesha is everywhere, so he doesn't need to go anywhere, so he doesn't need big feet. So, little feet is fine. A mouse is the vehicle. One of the things that we do is each of these gods has a vehicle, which is a bird or an animal. So that's one way in which we imbue sacredness in everything. So every animal, every bird around, there is some association. So a mouse is Ganesha's vehicle, and the symbolism is that the mouse is very tiny, can go into the crevices of everybody. So I can't keep any secrets from Ganesha. Ganesha has big ears, or even my silent prayers can be heard by him. So on, and then there are all these stories. What are his favorite foods? What does he like to do? He's a great dancer. Ganesha is one of the masters of dance. So, paradox, you have this figure of this big elephant-like, pot-bellied figure, and the idea is that he can dance. And he delights his parents, that is Shiva and Parvati, with his dance. So, stories around that, and many, many, many stories. So, the point I'm making here is a very simple one, that for devotion, rather than say, be devoted to some formless entity, here is a form, and with stories. So get personal, give yourself totally to this form. And the scriptures say, if you devote your heart and mind completely to God, then God will lift you from this misery and take care of you. That's a quote from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12. So, that's the path of devotion. And there's many, many more aspects to it, obviously, because there's a huge following. Because, this is tough. Very few people go through that. This is also fairly tough. I mean, people start, but they don't get very far with it. But this, is one of those things where everybody can enter. This is the simplest and the most difficult. Right? The simplest because everyone can enter a path of devotion. That's why all religions have that sort of devotion built in. But the most difficult because, it works if you're able to totally surrender. And that total surrender is one of the hardest things there is to do. My favorite sayings in the scripture is a statement which says, by any means whatsoever, rest your mind in God. By any means whatsoever, rest your mind in God. So, the scriptures are totally neutral on how you do it. Any of these paths is fine. So, all of these lead into meditation. And if you wish, we can talk about that step as well. All of them lead into meditation. So, meditation, clear and calm. So, to recapitulate, this is where we are, making money, having fun. We discover that we are unhappy because our minds are agitated. We start the process of disciplining our minds through ethical principles, first of all, through social action, giving rather than keeping, and through one or the other or more, whatever, of the different paths that help clarify the mind. Because in the path of knowledge, if I study the scriptures, I ask the question, who am I? What is my relationship with the world? And what is my relationship with God? So I ask those questions, try and get to the answers, and with those answers I'm able to clarify my mind. And when I know all this, then I'm perfectly calm, because I realize that I am Om, nothing can bother me, so what's there to be agitated about? Over here, I go very specifically into a technical process of meditation, and through substantial practice of meditation, hours a day, my mind becomes so clear that I'm able to see things as they are. And when I see things as they are, again I realize there's nothing to be agitated about. And here, by completely surrendering to God, I am totally free of all burdens. And whatever happens is His business. So I don't have to worry. I work, I do what I have to do, but I have no anxieties on my shoulders. So that again leads to a clear and calm mind. So all of these lead there, and that's where I stop. So from now, I'm sorry, you had your hands up, both of you, I ignored you, yes?
Well, what happens to people who don't have the capability to make money and be happy? Because there are a lot of people
Yeah.
that are not making money and being happy. So how do they find God?
Let me make sure I understood you correctly. Are you saying that by making money they get happy, or by making money they don't get happy?
What? I'm just using your two
Right.
bottom.
This is an attempt to make money. This is not
Okay.
making money.
Right,
Okay? So suppose I have not made any money.
correct. I'm poor.
Yeah, I'm poor. But that's fine. Because what this whole chart is saying is that making money is not enough.
Right.
Not making money is fine. Because money has very little to do with happiness.
Well, I got that part.
Yeah, right. So if you're poor, no reason why you can't be happy.
Okay, so they have the same avenue
Yeah.
up. Okay.
Absolutely the same. One of the things in Hinduism is some people can opt out of the system, so to speak, right? They renounce, they become monks. And these are people who, I've met people who have got graduate degrees. One of them is actually a neurosurgeon who at one point said, forget it. So they go off and they live on nothing. I've been to places which are at an altitude of 12,000 feet, snowbound for 5 months of the year, and they're in there for 12 months of the year. And for 3-4 months, they can't get any supplies. No vegetables, for instance. So whatever they have packed up, rice, potatoes, something which they can keep, that's all they eat. There were a few blankets, and some roof, not a roof really, a kind of shelter. And they're happy. I met them. I was there one March. I was there just coming out of this, right? And the roads were still closed. And I took some carrots and spinach with me, and there were only about 50 people there. Word went round immediately. Vegetables are here. And so the I gave them to one person, he promptly distributed it to all of them. And I met them, and they're just perfectly cheerful and happy. So, possessions has nothing at all to do with happiness. And of course, you're all familiar with the opposite. You know, you can have tons of money and be quite miserable.
That's true.
So the whole idea here is to say, get a clear and calm mind, if nothing else by devoting yourself to God. And that's all you need. Sorry, you had a question, ma'am?
Oh, can't remember what that was.
All right, we'll come back. Yes.
I've heard that Dharma is like a daily living code.
Yeah.
Can that be found in the Bhagavad Gita?
Yes, if you look at chapter 16, the first several verses is a list of 26 things, 26 values, starting with fearlessness, and so on. But since you asked, let me put 10 values down, which are very simple. Which, the more popular place for this is here in the Yoga Sutras. There's one category called yamas. These are things you must not do. And another category called niyamas, which is, these are things which it would be good to do. So, the first is, do you want the Sanskrit or the translations? Translation. Okay, I'll write the Sanskrit and tell you the translation. First is ahimsa. Ahimsa means non-injury. Satya, which means truth. Ahimsa, Satya. Asteya. Asteya is non-stealing. You know, I was in one of these modern schools which have these smart boards, and I was going there rubbing on them, and it didn't work. I'm much happier with this. Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya means non-indulgence. There's more to that, but that's. I mean, don't go overboard in sensory activity. And aparigraha, which is non-acquisitiveness. So don't accumulate stuff. So non-injury, truth, non-stealing, non-indulgence, and non-acquisitiveness. These are things that you have to, these are things telling you what you should avoid. Yeah?
Sir, I noticed that you used the word non.
Yeah.
And I also noticed that in the reading. Could you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, these are things which are to be avoided. So the structure is non-injury, meaning don't injure anybody. Sort of golden rule kind of stuff.
Right, but it's not, do not injure.
Do not
non-injure.
injure. Yeah. Non-injury, it's a question of whether you want a verb form.
Okay,
or
I
noun.
thought there was an essence. to that.
These are nouns.
Yeah.
These are nouns. That's why they're translated as nouns. So, non-injury, truth, asteya, non-stealing, brahmacharya. Brahmacharya literally means walking in Brahman. Walking in Brahman. That's what brahmacharya means. Which means I'm always aware that I am Brahman, and that's what informs all my activities. So then that gets translated into don't be so body oriented that the sensory activities of the body is what consumes you. Remember, you're something other than that. You're something deeper other than that. That's what that means. And aparigraha, parigraha means to accumulate. Aparigraha, do not accumulate. Do not grab and keep. That's basically what the literal meaning of that is. Then niyamas, these are things that is good to do. Shaucha, which means purity. Santosha, which means contentment. Tapas, which really means making yourself hot, but I don't write that down. It means austerity, means sort of restraining yourself so that you create heat in you. Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya, which means self-study, and Ishvara Pranidhana, Swadhyaya and Ishvara Pranidhana. Swadhyaya means study, and Ishvara Pranidhana means surrender to Ishvara, surrender to God. So these are things which it is good to do. Purity of body, speech, and mind. Santosha, contentment, be happy with what you have. Tapas, gather your energies, concentrate them and focus them into something more productive. Swadhyaya, study yourself, meaning turn inward, understand what's going on inside you, in your mind, and that will teach you what to do. Another meaning is Swadhyaya also means study of the scriptures by yourself, self-study. Ishvara Pranidhana, surrender to God. So, that's a sort of working definition of what dharma is. There are many, many, many such lists. And they're overlapping lists, so you can always find commonalities. Yeah?
Two questions about the journey itself.
Yeah.
Karma yoga, does it sort of branch out into those three paths, or is that something different? Is sort of acting in a way that unites you with your nature something's totally different than which path you choose to get to?
There's a sort of a debate on that. Some people treat karma yoga at this level. That is, it's one of the paths. A popular rendering of the Bhagavad Gita will say the Bhagavad Gita talks about three paths: the path of action, the path of knowledge, the path of devotion. But commentators that I sort of go with more, karma yoga is purifying the mind. This whole thing is a matter of the mind, right?
Right.
And so what karma yoga does is to purify the mind. What does that mean? The way we act in life is the result of habits. We have various ways in which we have got accustomed to dealing with situations. Things we want, things we don't want. Those are the things that pollute our minds. Because, when I see something, immediately my mind is telling me, I like it, I don't like it. And if I like it, I want it. If I don't like it, I want to run away from it. And guess what? All the things you're running away from are chasing you, and the things you want are elusive. So that keeps us going. And so what karma yoga does is to say, look, get over that. Do things because they have to be done. Get over this business of I like this, I don't like that. And in our society with children, we really encourage them to say, do you like vanilla or do you like chocolate? Right? I mean, this is a big thing, and chocolate's your favorite. No, the strawberry is your favorite, So you go on and on trying to inculcate the idea that you must like something and you must not like something. And we encourage that. Whereas that, in fact, is what pollutes the mind. So if you've got to the point where things are fine, you give me coffee with sugar, that's fine. Coffee without sugar, that's fine. Coffee or tea, that's fine. So that kind of attitude where you're just at peace and whatever happens, happens. That is what you wish to develop the first stage with Karma Yoga. You just do what you have to do it for others, don't try and keep things. Sorry, you had a question. Sorry, I'm catching you when you were...
Yes. Well, I sort of had like a philosophical question. So, if all of these, gods and paths along your spiritual journey are only ever to get you back to Om, which
Yeah.
is everything,
Right.
and is, just consciousness. And if you were just getting back to yourself being everything, then isn't there also a notion that you're just nothing?
Or everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's like satisfactory. Like, well, I'm everything or I'm nothing. I mean,
And I'm both. And I'm beyond both. Because what is thing? Everything, nothing.
so what's the point?
Well, if...
Sorry.
I was at a middle school yesterday, and I was going through a modified version of this.
I hope so.
And I was basically making the point that happiness is something that's in me, and I get beyond all this happiness from objects kind of stuff. And there was one girl who sort of actually, it was mind-blowing for she said, what's the point of that? I don't know what kind of happiness is that? What kind of, and she was completely, jumping out of her skin. What kind of happiness is that? So I had to sort of try and calm her down first. So, there's one kind of happiness, which is sort of roller coaster kind of stuff. You have your highs, and then you have your lows, and then you have highs again. And when you're high, you're really happy. When you're low, you sort of bury yourself, come out of it again. So, with that, you can never discover your nature. And so you'll never get to the point where you go beyond this business of I like this or I don't like that.
Right.
And you're constantly you're the victim of what is around you. You're a victim. And one of my teachers used to say, don't let the keys of your happiness be in someone else's pocket. My happiness, my keys, my pocket. Right? So that's the philosophy. And then in the scriptures there is a passage which says, to address this point, Taittiriya Upanishad is one of the Upanishads. It says, imagine a young man who is healthy, vibrant, brilliant, rich, and think of how happy that person must be. 1 unit of happiness. 10 times that is the happiness that this person will have. 10 times that is the happiness that this celestial being will have. 10 times that, etc. Goes 7 steps. Because we have all kinds of beings. So 7 times that, 7 times 10, so whatever, 10 to the power 7, or 7, 10 to the power 7, of this 1 unit of happiness, that is the happiness of what is called Brahmananda. Brahmananda. That's a combination of Brahman and Ananda. So the bliss of Brahman is 10 to the power 7 times the bliss of a perfectly healthy, perfectly vibrant, brilliant, terrific, successful young man. And you feel that actually, because as you practice, you discover that there are so many things that undermine one's happiness, which are completely unnecessary. The undermining is completely unnecessary. So you just get over that.
So then is it a true assumption that I have that really it's very functional thing? It's not about this is right and wrong because this is right and wrong, but do these things because they work.
Yes, very important point. There are no commandments here. Remember, I mean, there's nothing here that says thou shalt. Because all of that is, you know, you want whatever you want, and you figure out what you need to do to get it.
Which kind of goes back to your question about do not, to do that and the nons.
Also, this journey is a very long journey. And so recognition that it may not happen in one lifetime. So you have many lives, and the scriptures say that in every life there is progress or regress, depending on how you live your life. But wherever you are, that carries forward into your next life. There's a ratchet. So if you make progress in this life and you haven't got the whole way, that's fine, because next life you get started where you left off. Yeah.
Was that a tenet of faith from the very beginning, or was that also functional? Like, did all of this come about first, and then people were like, well, we can never get there, and they're like, and then...
You know, any question of chronology for Hindus becomes very complicated. Because we don't have a real sense of history in that way. You know, time for us is cyclical, so everything comes around, goes around, so there's a whole unfolding, and then there's evolution, involution, back again, evolution, involution, so all kinds of things are going on. The same events happen in multiple time cycles. So you get stories which are a little bit different because this happened in this time cycle, that happened in a different time cycle. So when you say which came first, when was this, whatever, you know, I shrug my shoulders, because as far as I'm concerned, all of this is old stuff. It's been time tested. And so I want to know whether it works. Whether it is 3,000 years old or 7,000 years old, doesn't matter. And whether this came before that doesn't matter. Because all of these scriptures, by the way, are anonymous. There are no authors. Because they felt, you know, it wasn't me doing anything. It was whatever was revealed to me and I wrote down. Or I said and somebody else wrote down. So there are no authors. So there's no way of telling that, you know, this person actually wrote that and that person wrote this or whatever. The later texts, yes, which are explanatory texts, but not the earlier ones. Yes?
One of the things I like is that it doesn't seem that there is any judgment in terms of where you are on this path. You can be down at Artha,
Yes.
and that's just as fine.
That is where you are.
Being
And you know, there are four, in the system, there are four goals of human life. The four goals are 1, 2, 3, and 4. All four are goals of life. One.
Could you do that again? 1, 2, 3, and 4.
The Artha, Kama, Dharma, and Moksha. So all four are goals of life, depending on where you are, what you want to do. And if you are devoted to making money, go ahead, make money. And you realize after a while, maybe a few lives, that, you know, that it's not nothing much there, nothing much to it. Yes?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, well, I had a second part
Sure.
to that. Was that
Yeah,
okay?
sure.
So, what is it that drives us upwards? What is that?
The restlessness that comes from not being whole.
So there's
the-
a yearning there.
Yes, and not for everybody. You know, and in our system, you don't try and put the yearning where there isn't one. The yearning comes, then that person wants to know more. So wherever the yearning is, that's the direction in which people go. And the scriptures have a metaphor of the mind, or the self, being like a bird. And one of these versions is on an ocean liner. So it's on a boat. And the bird can fly away and see all kinds of things. But it has to come back to the boat to rest. Or a bird that's trained to hunt can fly off, hunt, do whatever it wants, but then it comes back to the perch. So we are like that. No matter where we go, our minds, when we are awake, go all over the universe, but at night it folds back into sleep. And guess what? It's sleep that gives us the most joy. So those are the metaphors that, when you are home, you are in joy. And the rest is simply a matter of ignorance. That's why there's a lot of emphasis on knowledge. It's our ignorance, because I don't know that I am infinite. I think I'm limited. Because I'm limited, I think I need something to make me happy. And I look around and try this and try that. If happiness was in a particular object, that object would make everyone happy. If I feel happy when I'm having coffee, coffee is not where the happiness is. Because why does coffee make somebody else sick? So it's not in the coffee that happiness exists. If happiness existed in coffee, every cup of coffee I had, I'd be more and more happy. Right? But not so. So happiness doesn't lie in the coffee. And the same is true of all objects. Every single object. So then you ask the question, where is happiness? And you say, in the mind. And that's challenged as well. It's not in the mind. And it'll take a few minutes. What time do we break?
Well, why don't we break now and then we'll start with that? Can we do that? Or do you want to do it, or would you rather?
5 minutes, one way or the other.
Why don't we go ahead with the question
All right.
and then we'll take a break, okay?
Okay, so how is it that happiness is not in the mind? The theory is the following. I have a yearning for coffee. So let's say I'm reading a book. I'm sitting there reading a book, perfectly peaceful, and suddenly I say, I feel like a cup of coffee. So something has happened. So I'm unhappy. I've got to get myself a cup of coffee. I go, make my cup of coffee, bring it back, I have a sip, happy. So I think, coffee, say, wonderful, made me happy. What's really going on? The analysis is that in my mind are these habits